or wall socket or in the fitting above. Really? Okay, again. Hi, I'm Marta and this is NotEnoughTECH. I have a Shelly 1 device. What is a Shelly 1 device? It's an internet switch with a twist. Just like Son of Mini, and I'll be talking about this in the next video. It's an internet switch that is capable of actually retaining the function of your wall switch. Previously, if you wanted to use something like this, Son of Basic, if you turn a switch or wall switch off, you would lose the internet connectivity to it because this Son of would be powered off. Not with Shelly. Shelly is powered via mains and then connects to the switch as well. So it will control your switch and it will control the lights. So you can use your smart devices, you can use your internet or app to actually toggle this, as well as retain the function of your traditional toggle on the wall. Shelly is so small because its intended place to live is either behind the wall socket or wall switch like this, or in the ceiling above the light fitting. And where it's gonna end up depends on your country. Each country has their own standards in terms of wiring, and on the screen you can see two different types of wiring. In one, the switch itself is at the end of the loop, and in the other one, the switch itself is just breaking the power delivery before the light bulb. Now, which one applies to you really depends on your house, and you have to double check this. But before you start unscrewing anything, just remember you're dealing with a high voltage. It's dangerous, you can hurt yourself, and if you aren't sure of what to do, just call in professional. Now, if you undo the wall switch, you'll see the cables. If you have two cables fitting in, this is likely end of the loop, and the power delivery cable is going to be in the ceiling, and this is where the Shelly has to go. Now, if you're going to see more cables in here, especially a power cable coming in, before being interrupted with the switch, you have to mount the Shelly just before the wall switch. Word of warning, guys, I'll be using Amazon Echo wake up word, so if you don't want any unwanted triggers, mute your device now. So behind me you can see a setup. I have a wall switch, I have a light connected to it, obviously everything is there, and the Shelly one is installed in between. Now I've just turned the light off, which usually if you use a Son of like device like this, like Son of Basic or a smart light bulb, you would not be able to control the device anymore because the entire system is powered off and there is no Wi-Fi connectivity because of it. But with Shelly 1 I still have controls over the internet because the Shelly is actually powered. So let's try this. Alexa, turn office on. As you can see, everything works beautifully. And now additionally, in a Shelly app you can actually predefine the behavior of the wall switch. So I have it set to edge behavior, which means every time I press on it, it will check what is the current state of the bulb and apply an opposite setting. But you can define many different behaviors and also not only work with toggles, but also with push button switches. So if you have a push button instead of like a flip switch, you can still configure that and use it well with Shelly 1, and that's brilliant. There are two flaws with Shelly 1. First of all, the enclosure is glued, which means you cannot access easily the jumper responsible for switching over the power supply type. So if you want to go from 220 or 110 in US into a 12 volts mode, you have to switch the jumper, but the jumper is so deep inside the enclosure that you have to take off the enclosure. And since the enclosure is glued together, you're risking actually breaking it. And for me, that's a very bizarre design choice. Another bizarre design choice is the number of terminals. We have 5 different terminals available for us to use. And in the typical lighting scenarios, you would have 6 cables. You would have 2 cables responsible for delivering power. You'd have 2 cables responsible for the loop with the light bulb, and another 2 cables responsible for the loop with the switch. And unfortunately, the Shelly design allows 5 cables and requires you to split the live wire into 3 different connections and the ground a wire into two connections, which is rather difficult to do if you're not an electrician and using push clips. You might find yourself running out of space inside the socket really quickly. Take your Shelly one and add 5 wires. Then you're going to need 4-wire connector, 3-wire connector and 2 2-wire connectors. Tin the ends of each wire to make them easier in terms of slotting them inside of the connectors, and label the cables accordingly. Use the following schematic to connect your Shelly 1 device to the bulb, to the switch and to the live wire. Push in all the wires inside the connectors, making sure all the connections are secured firmly so you wouldn't cause a short circuit during the operation of the Shelly 1. So let's take a look at the app. So you have your usual groups, you have your scenes, you have your rooms, and you can add the devices there. Now, the way I was adding my device was basically running a web server. Well, the device by itself runs the web server, which you can see in here, and you connect it to it at first in access point mode, and then you go to security settings, enter your credentials, and your device is going to be in your local network. Once it's in your local network, you can easily add it either by IP or search it on the network. So once the device is in here, you get pretty much the same set of settings that you can use to connect to it. So you're gonna have your timer, you're gonna have your schedule, you're gonna have additional Wi-Fi settings, you're gonna have actions, which are interesting because you can submit an HTTP request to your server based on actions. So if you switch the button on the wall, you'll be able to notify another server, or if the light is gonna come up, you'll play another action. So that's something that you could take advantage straight away. Now, you don't have to run the app at all. The web server is good enough to actually interact with it, but if you want to have a cloud control and use the smart speakers, you would have to go to app and set up relevant skills. Now, once you connect it to the Shelly, you can configure a couple of things. So you have a power on default modes, there's a couple of modes, and you have a button type. So you can have a momentary switch or toggle switch, and then the way of detecting what's going to happen when you press the button. So this is quite useful and leaves you with lots of different options. Now, if you don't want, in the internet settings also you have cloud settings, which basically means that you're going to run the device on a local network only, and it's not going to share any information with outside world. Being Shelly, it comes with Restful API, and you can look up the documents in here. Now, there's a couple of things that I'd like to point out. First of all, there is a Mqtt support. However, the Mqtt support will disable the other functions, so you won't be able to use the smart speakers, which is a little bit disappointing. But since you've got a common HTTP API, then you can interact with the device in the same way without losing that smart speaker support. Now, there is one thing I would like to mention. Now, everywhere in the documents they mention the JSON files, and those are the examples that I provide on the side. But when it comes to controlling your Shelly 1, that's not explained properly, and when you go to control settings, you'll see that you have to submit a string with a value on or off. And for about an hour I was trying to troubleshoot this and figure out how to do it correctly, because I was submitting a JSON. Turns out it's not a JSON that you have to submit, but you have to submit it in this form. So you're gonna have your key, which is turn, equal, and then the value, which is x. In this case, gonna be on or off with the lowercase. And if you obviously want a status, all you have to do is just to send the empty one to a status to get the status update. So I'll show you how it works. So let me clear the previous one. And now this is to get the status, and you got your status settings, and this is obviously to control it on and to control it off, so you can submit those to Shelly and get the response informing you about what you've just done. Even though I like the software and I love the ability to actually send the HTTP requests and be able to still use the smart speakers, it is hard for me to actually recommend this device, mostly because of the installation fuss. Now, if you have enough space for all the clips that I've actually used to connect the device, that's fine, and that's a fairly safe way to connect this inside of your wall. But you might run out of space, and calling in an electrician to do the job for you and splice the wire correctly, leaving enough space for that, might be an expensive journey to take. Now, let me know what you think. I'm definitely gonna take a look next at Son of Mini, and then in the next article and probably video I'm going to discuss Shelly 1 versus Son of Mini, so you would know which device probably you should go with. I don't have a posting schedule, so if you're interested in my content, consider following me on social media. In addition to that, on Instagram I usually put a short videos or snippets of work in progress, so if you want you can follow me through these channels too. As for now guys, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care, bye.